Welcome to the final talk in the series, Genesis, the first 3 chapters. Now, if you've stayed the entire course of 40 talks, give yourself a pat on the back. Well done. I hope you found it helpful and beneficial in every way. Now, I deliberately predicated this entire series on Steven Weinberg's 1977 book called The First 3 Minutes. In that, the great physicist outlined a very plausible explanation of the first 3 minutes of the universe. And that was the first 3 minutes, but the first 3 chapters of Genesis gives us the foundations for a relational universe, not a physical universe, but a relational universe. And in that we learn so much about God, about man, about how we relate to one another, how we relate to our environment. It's foundational in every way. We learn about God, we learn about our human responsibilities, we learn about our moral obligations to a righteous God, the fall and all that followed. It's all there in the first 3 chapters of Genesis. In many ways, the 3 chapters are a bit like a prologue to the rest of Genesis and the rest of the Bible, the whole scriptures. I don't know if any of you are familiar with Shakespeare's Henry V, but in Kenneth Branagh's film version or production of that great Shakespeare play, it starts with the prologue. And Genesis 1-3 is a bit like a prologue. And in Branagh's film, he appears as Henry V, but he has Derek Jacobi appearing as the person delivering the prologue. And Derek Jacobi stands in a great big hangar in contemporary dress, and he starts to give the prologue. Oh, for a muse of fire that would ascend the brightest heaven of invention, a kingdom for a stage, princes to act, monarchs to behold the swelling scene. Then should the warlike Harry, like himself, assume the port of Mars, and at his heels, leashed in like hounds, would famine, sword and fire crouch for employment. And so he carries on. And as he does, he walks through this great hangar, and at the conclusion of the prologue, he opens 2 big doors, and we are let into the fields of Agincourt, where Henry V is leading his men. Genesis 1-3, a prologue which opens the doors onto the rest of the scriptural text and God's great plan of salvation. But it all starts in Genesis chapters 1, 2 and 3. There we learn about why it is that we have a yearning within us to relate to God. There we find what it is to have this sense of alienation and isolation because of the fall and our rebellion. We learn what it is that it is to be human, how it is to be human, to relate to people, to God, to the environment. We learn there about the dignity of duty and love and responsibility and work. We learn of God's love and judgment and his great plan of salvation. It all has its origin, its beginnings, its genesis in those first 3 chapters. It all starts there, and from there we learn what it is to be human in God's universe. Somebody asked me the other day if I had to sum up the entire scriptures in a pithy little saying, what would it be? And I would say this: God is God and I am not. And we find that in Genesis 1-3. God is God and I am not. It's no use me trying to drag God down to my horizons, trying to reduce God to human form. He elected to do that later in the incarnation, but I don't do that. It's no use trying to elevate myself to God by human effort or by imagining that I am like God. God is God and I am not. And that runs through all the scriptures. And we find its origin in Genesis 1-3. So I hope you found it beneficial to follow these talks, think about the issues raised, discuss them, reflect upon them, to God's glory and to our benefit. Well, thank you for watching and listening. Thank you.